Well, the first time I performed in a church was probably on some television show in some far off land where there was a television broadcast of a number of artists, not part of anything religious. It was just that it was music that had some spiritual nature attached to it, but it was a multi-artist performance. And a few of those things happened, I guess, 20, 25 years ago. And the first time I performed in a church in the sense of it being a fundraiser was actually at the invitation of Greg Lake, the bass player and singer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who was doing a few, well, that's actually just one or two songs, perhaps just one song, at St. Bride's Church in Fleet Street in London, where being the church of the journalist trade, it was attended mainly by people who were journalists, producers, writers, editors, people in the print media primarily. So that was, he asked me to join him on a performance of one of his songs, which I did. And the curate of St. Bride's, George Pitcher, who, when he was ordained, then became a long-standing friend. He asked me to go back and play at St. Bride's again a year or so later to do a fundraiser for St. Bride's. And I did a couple of those, and one thing led to another. I was asked to go and perform at a few other cathedrals and other big churches in the UK. And I do it simply because it is raising money for historic buildings, which have, as you will be aware, they have no support from the government, unlike churches perhaps in northwestern Europe that are supported by government out of taxes. In the UK, they're on their own. They depend entirely on public donation, or in the case of some big cathedrals, an entrance fee to get in. Yeah. So it is a question literally of keeping the roof on. It seems to me a good cause. I'm a supporter of Christianity, but I make it quite apparent to people I don't refer to myself as being a practicing Christian. I have a great regard and respect for Christianity, and that's the religion I suppose I was born into. But I'm not a paid up Christian worshipper. However,
do you know Bath Abbey? It's my understanding you live in Wiltshire, so you're not that far away.
I'm not that far away. It's we're opposite corners of Wiltshire, but I've been to Bath Abbey 2 or 3 times in the past, just when I've been around, and like I do wherever I am, I walk into churches and cathedrals in various countries of the world, just to have a moment of silence, quietness, read a few inscriptions, and learn something about the history of the building. So that's my normal practice wherever I am, not just in Wiltshire.
What part will the church play in your performance just before Christmas? Will you involve the choir or the Abbey organ?
We try to bring into play a couple of examples of the church, cathedral, Abbey organ, because very often part of the big buck maintenance is the servicing of organs, whether they're 100 years old or 300 years old. They're very expensive to carry out repairs and service on. I mean, when I played in Chester Cathedral, for example, a few years ago, all of the money from the ticket sales went towards the restoration of the organ. So that's quite a common thing. But also, I think because I'm trying to draw attention to the choral side of cathedral life, that it is nice to work with a choir, whether it's a lay cathedral choir, or more often, I suppose, it's the choristers. I mean, they come cheap, and they're usually available at that time of the year, and of course, they're very much attached to the to the working day-to-day life of cathedrals,
Do you come
usually a
cheap?
school attached.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you were saying about choirs coming cheap. Do you come cheap? Is all the money from this concert going to the church, or you have a band, you're giving your time, you would expect some form of payment?
Yeah, well, I pay the guys in the band. I pay the crew guys. I pay for the sound and the lights and the hotels and the transport and everything involved, which, as you can imagine, costs quite a few £1,000s to do a performance. But that's part of what I fund in order that 100% of the ticket money stays with the cathedral. It's simpler. It's more clear cut, and out of the profits that I hope to make from my other concerts during any calendar year, then I can afford to, give a little back, and that's one of the charities that I choose to support.
What can we expect in terms of the musical program? I mean, this is going to be more than just Tull back numbers.
It's a concert that is really designed for playing in a place of worship, so there's a certain degree of paying respects to the traditions of musical liturgy in those Christian places of worship. It's also will feature some of the more popular side of Christmas music, but I guess 2/3 of it is material that is part of the Jethro Tull repertoire that happens anyway to have a seasonal, if not a Christian, reference in the songs. So I have quite a few songs that I can pull from, and then I usually have a one or two musical guests, and they feature in the show as well, performing a couple of their songs, which Greg Lake, for example, repaid the favor a couple of times. He came and performed on our show at Canterbury Cathedral in 2011. I think a year or two later where was it now? Another of the cathedrals in the southern part of England, not too far from him. It was nice to do that, and of course he has a famous Christmas song called "I Believe in Father Christmas," which I always thought was a very cheesy and bit of a tacky song. But when I actually came to read the lyrics and study the song a bit more in order to prepare to perform it with him, I realized it was actually a very erudite and clever piece of writing. And in memory of Greg, who passed away a few years ago, I still usually perform that song as a tribute to Greg Lake, and indeed Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who also lost another founder member a few years ago. So it's kind of nice to feature something like that. That's not one of my songs, but it has a part in my own history and part of the Christmas radio playlist to this day.
What does Christmas mean to you?
Another day in the office, usually, because the phone doesn't ring very often. I don't get so many emails, and I can actually get some work done. So it's pretty useful for me. The Christmas period is a good time for me to be working, and that really rolls on into the new year, because pretty much invariably on the 1st of January at 9 o'clock in the morning, I start work on a new project. That in the last January was a new album, which I started. And in fact, 3 years before that, I started work on a new album, but that got sidelined because of COVID primarily. And so that was delayed until release early this year. But on January 1st of this year, I'd already started working on a new album, and that's about 2/3 recorded, and I'm going to finish that one during the next few weeks, in fact, ready for a release next year. So it's a good time for me to work, Christmas.
Yeah, well, you most certainly are a workaholic, and with something like 60 million albums worldwide to your name. I'm going to let you go, but I can't end this short little interview without asking you two questions that maybe I've always wanted to ask you. In fact, I'm old enough to have seen you at the Isle of Wight Festival in 1970 and well remember it.
Well, I hope you kept your trousers on and away from all of those nasty drugs and stuff. It was another of those places that you really, people say, "Oh, I was at Woodstock," or "Oh, yeah, I was at the Isle of Wight." I think memory can sometimes be a little too kind to those sort of events, because in fact they have a lot of things attached to them, which is not necessarily particularly memorable for the right reasons. And the Isle of Wight Festival was certainly like that in 1970. It ended in a pretty awful way. A lot of people were very badly behaved, and so it was not a good example of the dying moments of the hippie era. It pretty much put the seal on something and said, time to move on.
Well, I always say, at least I can say I saw Jim Morrison alive before I went to France and paid tribute to him at his grave. But listen, are you still standing on one leg?
Well, if the money's right or the cause is good, yes. It's good to have a little, some little motif, some logo, some kind of a performance element that you can use to identify yourself. And Pete Townsend had his flailing windmill arm playing the guitar, and Jimi Hendrix pretended to play the guitar with his teeth, and Chuck Berry had his duck walk, and I, for some odd quirky reason, just ended up standing on one leg to play the flute. And those are things people remember, and I dutifully do it to this day, partly out of just proving that it's for a 75-year-old man, it's not impossible to stand on one leg for a while. It is paying some sort of tribute to the band, the audience, people who've been associated with us for so many years. It's just a little moment you can see they enjoy.
Yeah, doing a bit of research on you, a couple of descriptions that made me smile, made me chuckle this morning. You being described as a deranged flamingo, and also as the best one-legged flute player in the world. That's quite a tribute.
Well, the best one-legged flute player in the world, there is only one other, and he's a mythological Krishna, Lord Krishna of the Hindu religion, who is usually depicted visually standing kind of taking the weight on one leg with the other leg slightly crossed over. But that was something I didn't know about until I think it was 1991 when I first came across enough evidence of Krishna. When I was in India doing a press conference, and they showed me all these pictures and accused me of copying one of the most important Hindu gods, and I was aghast and felt very embarrassed about it. But I tried to point out that this was just some weird coincidence. However, being the best one-legged flute player and at least surviving one-legged flute player in the real world of today is not necessarily any kind of an accolade, because I'm the only one. In terms of other elements that have, I suppose, the tributes that people pay, you have to just accept it. When you get pretty old, people try to find some nice things to say about you to replace some of the horrible things they've said about you in the past.
Ian, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I've already booked our seats to come and see you at Bath Abbey, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for your time.
Well, pleasure. Nice to talk to you, and we look forward to seeing everybody at Bath Abbey on the 12th of December. It says on my year planner here next to my computer desk. So yeah, we're looking forward to it, and we won't be announcing our special guest, because I always have to assume they may get an urgent call from Granny saying, "You've got to visit old Granny, it's Christmas," and they have to duck out at the last moment. But I kind of know who they are. It's just prudent not to mention their names until they show up in the afternoon for sound check.
Well, make sure you get your COVID booster, and we look forward to seeing you in December.
I shall be on my 5th booster by then, don't worry.
Ian, thank you.
My 5th dose anyway, yeah. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you. Take care. Bye-bye.